We are live.
Hey.
Welcome to another episode of Just Engaged U&I-versity podcast. I am your host, Giovanna Burgess-White, and look, I actually did it right.
I know,
we're together.
We're together. Yay!
Hey, it's my co-host,
Yvette Valdenegro, and I'm so happy to be here in person, live,
yes,
and with a special treat today.
We have a special guest before we introduce our special guest. Couple of things, of housekeeping. Today we won't be able to answer comments. So if you want to go ahead and ask questions or put a comment, we will actually go back in the replay. We'll answer questions. Nolan can answer questions for you as well. And then stay on after because we have a huge announcement, big surprise. Not only we're doing some giveaways, we just have some things going on next month that we want to talk about. And so without further ado, we are going to introduce our special guest today.
Okay, I do have one.
Go.
Okay, I know that we're trying to shift everything from Uncut and Unleashed into the Just Engaged University. So one, we're thankful. Thank you for following us through that transition. We're going to keep posting, tagging, let everybody know that we're trying to do all that. And why? Because honestly, 2020 really brought some amazing things, and the educational pieces, the tools, the resources, we felt it was best to put it all in one location. So we're trying to bring everything together and really to benefit you. So there's just one location you're going to find us, and then from there we're going to start streaming all of our podcasting. So thank you for following the crazy train as always and the shift that we just came into. So thank you, and now let's get started with.
All right, special guest Nolan. I don't want to say your last name because I'll say it wrong.
Oh, no, that's cool. Yeah, my name's Nolan Kitkoski. I run the mortgage division here with Whizango Inc., located in the Woodlands. Been working with this team since we started the company back in 2019 October. We've got a lot of good things going on. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. We got to meet with you a couple of weeks ago and hear your story. As you guys know, the Just Engaged University platform is really for tools, resources, education to really help couples invest in their relationship before walking down the aisle. Yvette and I are both in the wedding industry. We see our couples sometimes 2 years out because they're booking a venue, they're booking a wedding planner. And so we saw a lot of problems back in 2018 that couples were ready to invest in a $30,000 to $60,000 wedding,
Right.
But they hadn't invested in the relationship. They hadn't talked about finances. They hadn't talked about compatibility. They hadn't really even talked about like their 1 to 3 year plan. But yet they were ready to plan the 6 hour day,
Right.
the 6 hour event. So we wanted to have you on to tell us your story about your engagement.
Okay.
And then just walk us through what happened, how you called it off. And we would just want to ask you questions on like the during, the after, and the now, because a lot of people, that's what they do go through. When they take our course, when they take our classes, compatibility is one of the hardest topics.
Yeah.
We have a 3-page questionnaire that we really make them go through. And sometimes it takes couples 6 to 8 weeks to really even get through it.
Mm-hmm.
The conversations are hard to have. A lot of it has to do with communication styles, conflict resolution, but really the non-negotiables of what's about to happen with their life.
Right.
So we want to hear about you.
Yeah, that sounds good. What would you like to hear first? I guess the beginning?
Yeah, just tell us, okay, and I'll just kind of add to that.
Sure.
When we heard your story, obviously you kind of got like, hey, and here's Nolan, and this is what happened to him. And it was kind of like a ha, ha, ha. But I quickly, honestly said to you, I said, wow. And I said, can you turn the camera to him? Because I really want to say, I think it's incredibly brave to say to someone, hey, yes, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, but for some reason there were red flags that came up that you decided that, and we want to hear from your words,
Sure.
But that you said, I'm no longer comfortable. So exactly what Giovanna just said, the compatibility, when you start really processing reality and what that really means, there's some things internally that happen that you go, maybe this isn't the greatest idea for me to be doing now or ever. That's a personal choice. But I really feel like there's a lot of people out there that are in the situation that you were in, don't know what to do, don't understand their feelings, and are now like, well, am I the only one? So we keep it uncut and unleashed. We're really real in here. So yes, just begin with your story, your personal journey of really what happened.
Yeah, well, just to piggyback off of that a little bit.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, actually, they just kind of went down the same path, not of ending it, but moving forward with it. Hopefully it works out. We'll see. Time will tell. But it's just a kind of another layer of making sure that you are with the right person before it's too late.
Yeah.
Because I was almost there, right?
And most people feel like, oh, well, we were planning this wedding. I'm embarrassed to call it the
Right, yeah,
wedding.
you've already sent out the invitations, you've got all this stuff,
Yeah.
everybody's expecting it, it's on their calendars, they've already changed other plans that they've had in their life to accommodate your wedding, and then here you are considering turning it off,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think moving that around is more beneficial, not only for you, but for them as well, because you don't want them to, the reason you invite people is to share the moment with you.
Right.
But if you're sharing that moment with the wrong person at the wrong time,
Yeah.
everybody kind
Well,
of
and you don't want to build a life that's not worth living and then get a divorce, because that's what ends up happening. The first 3 years are the crucial years.
What is the percentage of divorce right now?
Right
During
now,
COVID, it went up to like 55, almost 60%.
What about pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID, it was at the lowest, so it was below 30%. But engagements were longer, which is what we always tell our couples. It's not about not marrying your soulmate. It's not about not being with that person, but it's about taking the time during your engagement season. It's an engagement season for a reason.
Gotcha.
And people like to rush it. It's like, oh, we got engaged, when's the wedding?
Yeah.
You know, then you get married, when's their kids? I'm like, there was this book or society that said this is the timeline, and really the engagement season shouldn't be rushed, because that's when you're really figuring out who are we together, who are we going to become together, but yet let's not lose ourselves. And then the first 3 years is normally when marriages end up in divorce. And then crazy enough, when they have children, they normally wait longer to have the divorce because they feel bad for the children. So, you know, you're looking at 10 to 15 to 20-year marriages that weren't even supposed to really happen because they didn't invest that time, or they just didn't have the conversation. So it's really what we do. People are like, well, this is crazy. You're a venue owner. Like, why don't, and I go, I prefer, like, we're already working with these clients for them to really take their time. And we're going to get into your role with us now, because buying a house is important. Maybe you want to move, maybe you want to travel, and we see couples spend so much money on the one day, and then their first 3 years are like, well, we can't do anything because we spent everything on the wedding.
And then they're frustrated and they're yelling at each other. And
you've got a house that's going to be, I don't know, on average right now it's like 7 years, or you get your 7-hour wedding, and it costs the same to buy each. Actually less to buy the house most times.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. It's crazy, but people aren't educated, so that's kind of where we come in. We've been doing this for 3 years now, and it's crazy that couples don't have engagement coaches, because that's it's exactly what we do, is we coach them through that process.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Yeah, that's huge value for anybody considering getting married or engaged.
Yeah. Okay, so how long were you dating?
So we were dating for, call it 3 years.
Okay.
Right? A little less, but call it 3 years is when we were together.
Okay, and then how long was your engagement?
Our engagement was about a year and some change.
Okay, so that's 4.5 years total, or engagement?
So everything, I would say we're together for, call it 4 years. So.
Okay, and then these are personal questions, but I want to ask this only because I feel like someone listening, it gives them a bigger picture of like, oh, you don't get it, you weren't living with them, or you were living with them, or were you guys living together?
So we actually moved in together after 6 months. Okay. Yeah, and then I got a house. We moved into the house, lived there for probably a good year and a half, bought another house. Actually, it ended up being right across the street from my dad's place, because I was thinking, okay, well, we can build on this land, you know, it's already got a small house. Dad will be right, grandpa will be right across the street, right? Like kind of putting that plan together. Yeah. And then ultimately it's when it kind of just deteriorated, and she went her way and I went mine. Okay, so a good solid 3.5 years of you guys actually knowing each other. Yeah. You were living in the same space, which a lot of people say, well, we're not living together, or we are living together, so we know this, that, and the other. But during that, like when you, let's say it like this, when you proposed to her, were you like 110% like, yes, this is the one? Yeah, I never would have said it otherwise. Okay. Yeah. So then between that point of you be with me for the rest of your life was like, yes. From there, and you went, where were you in your planning process for your wedding? Like at what point were you at before you started having everything like kind of fell apart? Yeah. So we definitely had the venue squared away. Haley ran with all of that stuff. So she had everything buttoned up basically, with the bar, the food, the invitation list. Like I'll tell you right now, she did everything. My job was to fund it, and her job was to piece it together. Which is kind of typical of what we're trying to rework that system too. We're trying to rework the engagement season, and wedding planning should be both, because it's both of your days. But yes. Well, we had communication and conversation about it. Like we definitely had conversation, but she ran with it. Like she led the whole thing. I was just like, okay, let's talk about it. Sounds good, cool. Or maybe I don't like it this way. Let's change this. Okay, cool. And then she just like piece it all together. So I would say we're probably like 85% of the way there when it was all like said and done. And how far out from the wedding date was it? So technically we were supposed to get married April 9th of this year.
Okay.
And then she was going through promotions at work, which was great. We were doing things with the company here, which great, but just things got out of whack a little bit. Obviously selling the old house, buying the new one was thrown in the mix of that. So we're like, man, let's kick the can down the road, so to speak. So we bounced back and forth between a couple of dates and actually settled on December 10th of this year, which gave us more than enough time to get our ducks in a row. But as it turns out, it wasn't really necessary.
Yeah, so interesting. We find this, especially I think people saw this in during the pandemic. When real life happens, it's like, I know I'm a very open person. I'm sure you're a really open person who you really are, but we kind of live here and like, oh yeah, on a date, let's go this, let's do that. We're hanging out with our friends, let's go on vacation, we're even living together. But those pressure points of real life happen and who you are inside really happens. And I'll just give you an example. As a mom, I love my kids. I would do anything for them. But I've had pressure points where all of a sudden mom just blows her lid and it's like, oh my God, who are you? And I've had to go back and apologize, or I've been like, I was wrong. That was not a good behavior. But there was something inside of me that I was angry about or not happy, but whatever, it came out, and obviously it affected my children.
Yep.
Same thing in a relationship. The pressure points cause you to feel things inside, and whether it just explodes or all of a sudden you start going, did they just say that? Are they just treating me this way? Are we just now in this conflict point? And unfortunately, sometimes those things you can't reverse. They really expose someone's true heart or whatever it is, or even someone feeling like there's just something not right here and I need to investigate it.
Yeah.
So when you said all those, like, we're the house and that, I'm like, ooh, those are all pressure. Real life, that's real life. It happens. Things that occur, and now you're like, how are we now responding as individuals, and how are we responding together as a couple?
Right.
Okay, so you started seeing kind of red flags.
Well, I wouldn't say that the promotions, because those are all, as far as I'm concerned, good things to look forward to. Like you're changing your house. Okay, cool. You're doing it for a reason because it's a better opportunity than what you had previously.
Right.
Great. Not always the case, but in our situation it was. The work thing, if you're growing up the ladder at work, you're probably growing your income. Obviously, you're taking on more responsibilities, but it puts you in a better financial, beneficial future than where you were previously. Right. A good thing. Sure, it comes with many different opportunities and situations that come up where it's like, okay, I've never run into that before. How am I going to deal with it? It's myself or with someone else.
Right.
And if I feel like some of the communication wasn't there like it probably should have been, not just in that scenario, but others as well, that definitely had an impact the wrong way. Because I was busier than ever. She was somewhat busier than ever. And we didn't make the time for each other like we used to. Or at least the time that we did have together wasn't as quality as it once was. Because I'm over here getting distracted with phone calls and stuff coming up just randomly. I'm not here to say that the reason that it didn't work out was all because of her. Like, a lot of it's because of me too. Right? So it's a two-way street.
Yeah. Okay, so at what point, because like you said, you're 110% in. You're like, yes. So at what point did you started feeling things, and then what were those feelings that you're feeling inside?
So I guess I'll just back up and say that I don't remember the official engagement date. It was towards the end of January. Let's just say in January. Through the end of the year, you got your holidays coming up and everything. And then we were talking about kind of our successes that we had this year, financially and whatever our goals were that we laid out prior, and a conversation of money came up. Yeah, I made more money than I ever did. This was her telling me this, and I was like, that's great, right? And then, but her debt increased and there was no money saved. I'm like, okay, shoot, that's a huge issue, right? And then we had health. I personally had more health goals than she did with regards to what I'm doing with like a gym regimen and watching what I'm eating. She didn't have any of that stuff. As the year progressed, it was like, okay, we'll start off here, and then it just all went downhill. And so physically she suffered from that as well. And then we had a conversation of plans that we were going to do to better the financial piece, better the health piece. Ultimately, it came down to a situation of, and I can understand where she's coming from, 100%, not knocking her for it at all. If you don't like me how I am, you don't like me enough to be with me. Can't let me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best type of deal. And I'm like, I get it. I appreciate you sharing that, but that's not how I feel as well, personally. Like, if I bring to you whatever the opportunity is, we should have enough communication and be able to work it out so that one person's happy, and then the other person can progress and become happy with that situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was kind of the big turning point. And late last year is when that stuff started to unfold. Ultimately, we got to about, call it Valentine's Day of this year, is when nothing blew up, because we never screamed at each other. There was no abuse in the relationship. There was no like verbal abuse, physical abuse, nothing like that. It was more like the silent killer, where nobody said anything, and it was just, you expected something but got something else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when it was like a mutual agreement, like this isn't going to work.
Yeah. Wow, that's
neither of us were happy about it, but
Right.
That's a lot.
that is a lot. But that's compatibility,
Financial stability.
financial stability. That's really your internal, how you are, your makeup versus her makeup, how she sees the world, how you see the world.
Yeah.
And again, when we're faced with situations or someone's telling us or asking us or showing us, and it's like you have two choices to go in the road, you're like, that road doesn't look very good to me, but this one is fine.
Right.
And the other person goes, no, but this is the road I like.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you can't make the other person feel that way. And honestly, that's where resentment comes in, because
Right.
if people are feeling a certain way, no matter what it is, but that other person isn't on the same page, it can build resentment.
Sure.
Now, here's an interesting thing. I don't think any relationship is 100% on the same page. You're not going to be like, I'm going to go left. I want to go left too. Let's go right. I want to go right. I mean, we don't live in a world like that.
Right.
But internally, you have signals that tell you, like, okay, this one I'm fine with. We don't have to be in agreement with.
Right.
This one,
Non-negotiable.
Yeah, this
right.
is a non-negotiable
Right.
for me. And then you have to work out, like, how many non-negotiables can you really live with?
Yeah, because ultimately it's deal breaker material, right?
Exactly.
100%,
Yeah.
which people don't talk about. You guys.
Right.
So one of the things that I want to say is you were already ahead of the time. So most couples, it's crazy, and I think it's generational, but most couples aren't even thinking about, homes and where they're going to be living and their careers. And so that in the mix of the first 1 to 3 years. Then there are other couples like you that were prepared. You had your home, you had your finances were what you thought were in order.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about this with our couples, just like you said, there's things that you can compromise on. Like, I think compromising is okay. Settling, definitely not okay. And then there's the non-negotiables. Yeah. And a lot of things like having children, people don't talk about beforehand. And that's something that if someone decides they don't have a child, and someone does, then you can't change someone's mind.
Right.
And so financial stability is one of the biggest things that we talk about, because right now a lot of people suffered financial loss together. Mm-hmm. If it's either a couple or one of the partners, both of the partners, maybe family, like direct family. Right. We saw a lot of that. Infidelity was huge because more people were spending time together. I know, for instance, in my relationship with my husband, that I've been with him for 10 years. Yeah. I've seen him more last year than I saw him in the 10 years altogether. Right. Because our work schedules, we have a co-parenting, I have kids with my husband. And so emotionally, it was a lot to carry on, having the kids home, having my husband home. So those are the things that we're seeing, and we're still in a pandemic. I mean, things are still happening. Right. And so when we are, with our couples and our clients, we try to give them this information and do this education, and it is very overwhelming. It is. So one of the things that we want to know is, after this silent period, after having this mutual breakup, what happens with the house? What happens with the ring? What happens with
the wedding?
The wedding.
Right.
It's okay, that's
Real
a
life.
huge. We've already planned.
Yeah.
Everything's 85% booked. We have a home together.
Yeah.
And I know the ring shouldn't be that important, but everybody talks about, where does the ring go? What should the ring happen? Does it stay? Does it go?
Yeah.
So what do you guys do this together? Did you guys sit down and say, okay, let's do it?
So yeah, we definitely didn't just have a conversation like we are with a list of things and this is where it's going. It was just kind of okay, well, this is what I'm willing to do or not do. And it was kind of an interesting situation. I won't bore everybody with the details with Texas common law marriage, up for debate on how you want to interpret that. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I kept the house because everything let me choose my words right here. I purchased the house in my name, with me on the loan, with me on the title deed, everything. So as far as everything comes back to me, it's, hey, Nolan's on the house. Okay, cool. So we had an agreement outside of kind of getting a bunch of attorneys and stuff involved where fees just get out of hand and ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm going to stay in the house and here's X amount of dollars. Good luck.
Right.
I guess I'll back up just a second to answer the ring question. It was just left
Okay.
in the house. Nothing said keep the ring. Nothing said don't keep the ring.
Mhm.
But she didn't take it with the rest of her stuff. I still have the ring. I'm probably not going to keep the ring to give to someone else. Not because like bad juju. It's just like
It's not for that.
someone else can
Yeah.
do what to with it.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't have any plans for it as of right now. It's just locked away.
And how long was the process of finishing it all? I mean, was it just like, I'm leaving,
So
we'll figure this out? And then
it was like, I think it might have been Valentine's Day or right after that or just before. She mentioned, hey, I'm going to go stay with a friend and I'm not coming back.
Okay.
I was like, okay. And then it was like text messages basically because we weren't talking to each other over the phone. It was just text. Like, all right, I'm coming on this day to get this stuff. I'm on this day to get some more stuff. There's still like a couple small things left that she can't store. Ultimately, I feel like we're on fairly good terms, all things considered.
Mhm.
Going to help her buy a house. So, I mean, that's a pretty...
Which leads into our other question, like, what happens now? Like, are you still friends? Can you still...
Yeah. We're not friends in the sense that we're going to go have a drink together, but we're friends in the sense that, I mean, I still love her as a person. I want the best for her overall. And if there's anything I can do to help her, like with buying the house or something, obviously she's seen me do what I do for a living on a daily basis and how I interact with clients, whether it's, you know, someone that's a real estate agent referred me someone that they want to do business with and I walk them through the process. She's seen me manage the transaction enough to have so much trust and confidence that I'm going to get the job done. Who else would she go to? Right? There's no one else that she would trust more.
You guys built a strong relationship for 3.5 years. And I don't, we've seen breakups normally more in a bad way where, and again, you had a lot of ducks in the row before. Most people do after, which, you know, there is no right or wrong. In my personal opinion, it should be done before. It was 5 years before I married my husband. You know, I'm like, no, I want to have all of that done. It was that was like a non-negotiable for me. So, you know, what do you do? I mean, it's still, we're in May, about to be in June. What did you do to help you, like to make you kind of move forward? I know it's a joint decision. It's not easy. I'm divorced. You're divorced. I mean, I kind of had I would say we were very adult. We had kids. We did the same thing. We sat down. We're like, we're not going to pay somebody to do this. We're going to do this ourselves. We're paid off all of our debt. We, you know, split our assets. We just did the right thing. Most people don't go there. Most people are like, it's just a hate relationship. They want to see the other person suffer. You know, it is.
Messy,
So how, you know, I guess tell our viewers and our listeners, like, what are you doing for you? Like, how are you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So some of the things I believe that kind of grew us apart, at least on my behalf, with work, doing like the workout stuff, really watching like food that I'm eating and stuff.
Your health.
Just health in general. Personal development with just doing different readings. But I've just said, you know, and I was like probably 60% of where I wanted to be in the relationship. Now I'm 100% of where I want to be outside of the relationship when it comes to just the career growing relationships, not with like a woman, but just like business relationships. So I've just taken where I was and just ramped it up big time on all fronts. So that's kind of been my treat to myself. It's like, okay, well, I've put, not that it was a sacrifice because I was still doing enough of what I like to do to make it work because I was with someone that I wanted to be with. So I thought, and now I'm just taking all that to another level.
How about emotionally? And then was there any like family connections? Because I know that some of the things that people say is like, you're not just, it's an investment. You invested in this person, they invested in you, and you've got financial investments, you got emotional investments, you have physical investments. So it's like all of a sudden now that's being taken away, but that's also, you know, 3 years is a long time. I'm sure she got to know your family, they got to know.
Oh, for sure.
So then it's almost like a divorce without being a divorce, but it's also a separation because now you have those relationships that are kind of like, but anyway, so that's kind of two questions. One, the emotional side for you, just what did you do to help yourself emotionally? I know that those are like active things, like I kept myself really busy, but in the background also is the emotional side of it. And then what about those connections that you guys had with family members?
So as far as the connections, I guess you can still see that you're pretty much mutual friends with everybody on Facebook that you were during the relationship. So I don't know that there's, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people are with it on both sides of the family, right? I'm personally not happy about how it ended, but ultimately it was supposed to happen that way versus going down this path and it happening, after kids,
Right.
and then a relationship that's not supposed to be there going on for years and years longer than it needs to, etc. But back to the family thing, like I have absolutely nothing against anybody in her family, and I don't think she has anything against anybody in my family. It's
Right.
I mean,
Relative.
That's good to hear.
a perfect example of how relationships, when you come to that crossroads and there are non-negotiables, it's okay to end them. Like, again, it's this whole marriage and weddings and society. It's like there is no right or wrong way, but this should be the way, because I know I grew not just as a person, but as like in my businesses and as a mother of who I wanted to be. And I'm like, I was putting myself in a situation where I was changing who I was for someone else. And sometimes my parents are old fashioned. They're like, that's what you're supposed to do. That's your role. You're going to be the nurturer, you're going to be the mother. But I'm like, but why? Like, why? And so I feel like with every relationship that ends, it's almost like you're getting to know who you really want to be and who you're supposed to be for that person. And if you're supposed to be with someone, or sometimes you're not. And that's okay. But if you're not who you're supposed to be and you're not at 100% of what you want in life, you can't give that to someone else. And I think that's where most people fall off. They're like, well, but we're getting married and we have to. And it's like, this is part of marriage. Like, we're going to have, and I'm like, no, that's not. And so we thank you for sharing the story. We want to tell our viewers, there's obviously light at the end of the tunnel. You're doing great. She's doing great. Right. We're also going to talk about now our partnership with Whizango, because we've always had a huge investment on investing. It's important. You can't have a great first year, 2 years, even your first 5 years. I love couples like, oh, I'm going to plan my 5 to 10 year. I'm like, you don't even have your first year ready. You can't even pay in, and 75% of the couples are paying for their own weddings. So it's this old school, like, parents are giving you money or paying for the full wedding. That's not happening with the common. Like, the common 25 to 35-year-olds are both working. They're both paying for their weddings. And we're sitting there and they're looking at the papers. And I'm like, okay, but what about like your living situation? What about your incomes? What about your credit score? What about and they're like, oh, we'll worry about that when we get
It's interesting too, because like we talked about in the beginning, you've got whatever the number is, 20, 30, 40, 50, sky's the limit on a wedding. And that's enough money to literally realign yourself financially so that you can have so less of a burden on your plate, like day to day. But now you're taking that and allocating towards something that, sure, I get it. The memories last forever. The photos, the videos, like everything about the experience is hopefully going to be something that you cherish for the rest of your lives together. But if you could take that money then that you kind of need for your day-to-day stuff, like
for your life,
paying off debt, getting your life in order for your future together, I mean, depending on where your priorities are, it could be worthwhile to knock that part out first and then tackle the wedding once you're more financially secure.
Yeah,
we're not talking about one or the other. Now, there is a show out there that everybody loves. It's like Marriage or Mortgage. Okay, I think it's great. It's an awesome show. I love it. My husband introduced me to it.
But
our partnership with Whizango is going to be marriage or money. Why not both?
Why not both?
There you go.
We can have both. And because, again, it's not a race when you get engaged. It's not like, okay, let's see how fast we can get married. You're going to be with that person forever. So if it's a year, if it's 2 years, there's no timeline. The timeline should be when you're financially ready. Because we see it. Oh, we can't afford a honeymoon. That's the next step.
That's a huge piece
like,
of it.
You want to go enjoy this crazy.
And have fun.
That's like saying you can't afford to have the wedding catered. You're gonna, what are you gonna do?
And then
McDonald's.
And then they're like, oh, well, then we can't. We're not gonna be able to buy a house for 5 years. And it's fun. So in my mind, I'm going, okay, there has to be somebody, partnerships.
Right.
You guys are financial pros. It's not just about the house too. I mean, the mortgage, the house is great, but it's other things. Like if I would have been taught when I was in high school, about investing and what that meant and the future and retirement, especially now because the times have changed. And, we see this with our couples. We're not we already give them so much with investing in the relationship that finances, I think, for us is extremely important because we can give them a real life budget of like your day to day, understanding how much money you guys have together before you get married is extremely important.
It's very important.
Yes.
Understanding the debt that you have before you're together is extremely important. Understanding the financial goals that you have individually is extremely important.
Right.
And so all of those things in partnership with what you guys do with the Rule of 35, we're super excited to we announced it last week on our platform. We're excited to have this kind of like 2-in-1 course. It's financial stability on our end with the 1 to 3 year plan, bringing in the Rule of 35 so they can actually see, okay, you know what, we don't have money. We can't afford a wedding. We need to be engaged longer, or be like, this is what we actually have together. And this is on paper what it looks like for us to say, hey, we can have an amazing $25,000 wedding and still have money to invest in the house and still have education on other investments. Yep. So talk a little bit about Whizango, talk about the Rule of 35, because we're excited to kind of just get into what we're doing.
Yeah, so the Rule of 35 is, I think, the holy grail of what we offer as a company and just to people in general. Because what it does a really good job of kind of seeing where you're at today, and then you get to determine where you want to be in the future, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 50 years from now. And then we can put together a plan to help map out what everything looks like between where you're at today and where you want to be in the future, not only with finances, but as a person. Because the Rule of 35, that means that your debt to income ratio stays at or below a 35, which on mortgage lending, we can go much higher than that. But to be financially secure so that you have some spending money, you can live a little bit.
Yeah.
If you follow the Rule of 35, it puts you in a good position for a lifetime.
Yeah, I love, so I've been able to see, the process. I love that it's visual, because there's nothing better than playing with numbers and saying, if you change this, then boom, you see the outcome. And when someone has a visual, then that gives you like that's where I can be. Yeah. This is what we could be doing. Then it becomes so much more tangible. And then thinking those things through, like you said, okay, so how much do we want to spend on the wedding? What do we want to do here? We do have something for the honeymoon. It just becomes, really real. But I also want to encourage our listeners and viewers or whatever who's listening to us. This isn't it's not necessarily for someone who's like, oh yeah, we're making $200,000 a year and show us where we to put our money. This is, like you said, whether you're in high school, whether you're in college, whether you just got your first job, whether you're looking for a job, whatever it is, we all need finances and money to participate in the world of buying and selling goods. You have to eat, that costs money. You have to live, that costs money. Right. So all of that is in the big bubble. So it doesn't matter where you are financially, how much you make an hour, your salary, then that becomes your bubble and what's going to work for you. And then do you want that to stay the same, or do you want it to grow? Like you said, what are your goals and how are you going to get there? And then when you physically see them on paper, you go, oh, okay, this is how this is all going to work for me with what their particular goals are.
Yes, exactly. That's the main thing, is getting whatever your goals are, helping you reach them. Yeah. Financially, mentally, spiritually, like where do you see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now? What legacy do you want to leave behind for your children or for your family? Like everything in between.
And I love what you just said, mentally, physically, spiritually, because we're definitely, it's holistic, and I hate to sound like, oh, we're like the gurus. Like, it's not like that. It's more like
we are the gurus.
We looking at everything is important. It's not just one piece. Right. All of those things that you mentioned feed into the reality of what happens. Yeah. So
they're all important.
They're all important.
Yeah, and they kind of feed off of each other, because our whole team pretty much believes that, for example, how you carry yourself mentally, physically, how you feel about yourself, your self-image will have a direct impact of how you perform in the marketplace with whatever your career is.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a good foundation to build on, which is why the Rule of 35 has Jaden, our CEO, the owner of Whizango. His grandfather had basically the Principles of Life course that he put together, and he sold it for whatever it was back in the 80s. That's actually integrated into the Rule of 35. So you've got your self-development, you've got in there, he is heavily spiritually involved with, whatever you're looking up to, God, whomever, to make that an important piece in yourself and your life, and then how that's going to impact what you're capable of for your financial future and your career.
Yeah. So and the reason that's so big, so we always teach it's sex, communication, and financial, or just money, are the three things that seem like a couple will either grow in, struggle in, divorce, or whatever, but those are the three main things. So that's one of those three pieces. But just like we said in the very beginning of this entire thing, where you come from, who you are, your family traditions, how you go about spending money, not spending money, your ideals of finances. I mean, there's so many things that are tied into that. And just like you said, spiritually, that's all tied into it. But that spiritual, where you view yourself spiritually also feeds into where you are going to put your finances.
Exactly.
So everything, but that's why we love what we do, because it's the bigger picture. It's who are you as an individual together, and then how are these two lives coming together? It's all going to mesh. Sometimes it's like a rrr, and sometimes it's it just flows. But looking at that big picture, and our whole passion is really just giving our clients that picture in order to make really good decisions and to learn together, so that the next 50 years are, the road bumps, but the road bumps are like, we knew that was going to happen.
Right.
We knew that was, we prepared for this. There's so much easier it's not perfect. We're not selling perfect lives. Yeah. We're just saying that, it's going to happen. Let's just give you the resources and the tools to make it better.
At the end of the day, financial freedom is happiness. Like I hate when people are like, money doesn't buy happiness. It's bullshit. It does, but it does in the right way. Because if you were educated about finances before you start your marriage, or before you start any relationship, it could be going to college. I mean, we see this all the time. People go to college and they're in debt. It's like America lives in debt. But financial freedom, like health, wealth, and happiness, is true. People have invested more in coaching in the past year because of COVID, because mindset. I mean, people don't have it. Business owners are losing their businesses. They've lost their career changes. So for us, y'all aren't financial advisors. You guys are financial coaches. Like, you really do understand, and we're engagement coaches. So it didn't make sense for us to not partner up and say, imagine starting your first year of marriage not having to worry about finances.
Right.
I mean, people look at us and they're like, what? It's so hard to understand because no one has ever taught it. So we're really excited to move with this. So if people want to see us this month, actually June's next month, June, we're gonna be talking about this in person. So if you're in Houston, we have so much going on. So if you're in Houston, you can come see us on June 24th. We're gonna be at the Peach Orchard in the Woodlands. We're gonna be sending out invitations. It'll be on all of our platforms. We're also gonna be speaking at the Bridal Extravaganza. We have 4 talking times on July 31st and August 1st. We're going to have Jaden on too. We can't have Jaden on. He's the CEO. He's a blast. So we're going to kind of let him tell us a story about how he grew up, how he started this company. But the main goal for us was, financial stability is important in any relationship in your life, but it's extremely important when you're planning a wedding and you don't even know what's to come.
Yeah.
And then we do have a special giveaway.
We do, and it's for the 2 times, right? Like you come to either one or the other, and then you put your name in it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to do giveaways for both. So if you come to either one of our speaking engagements, we are going to enter you to win a free venue. Right? Venue 311, it's a $4,900 value. So you get to have a free venue. Vendors are not included, but we are going to give you some amazing vendors that we partner with. Yvette will be planning the wedding. And so come and see us. We'll have this on our show notes. We'll have this on all of our platforms at Just Engaged University. And then our partners at Whizango will also have this on their platforms.
Okay, I just want to say this. Yes. I know when we did our Win Your Wedding giveaway, which was $15,000 worth of wedding services, I can't tell you how many people called and said, "Is this for real? Are you guys really doing this? Like, what's the catch?" Because everyone's like, if it's too good to be true, then it's not true. Again, learn the first time. Enter. Well, not even just enter. You must come.
You need to come
see us. You need to listen to what we're saying. But yes, it's a $4,900 value for a venue. Yes. And with all those people that are out there that have called me and said, I can't find this, I can't find that, or this is too expensive, or I wish $4,900, really easy.
And you're going to get the team at Whizango to talk about the Rule 35. We're going to talk about financial stability and your 1 to 3 year plan. So you're really going to have a whole package deal. The lesson for this episode is do not rush the process. You have to invest in your relationship. And that's not just that money. You have to invest in building your relationship before walking down the aisle, because we see it all the time. We appreciate Nolan's sharing his story, because
and being open. And
so many people don't share because, again, it's this feeling of, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed, I'm ashamed. No, this is real life. The statistics are there. People are in bad relationships, married for decades, have children, and it's important to us to understand that when you give those tools and those resources, when you educate yourself, when you become, the people you're supposed to be, and you understand what life really is. I mean, there's passion and purpose to life. You're going to really have an amazing life together. So
I agree with that.
yeah. Anything else you guys want to add before we go?
No,
That's it.
I think it was great.
Yvette, thank you for having me.
Yes,
Oh,
thank
no,
you. So
thank you.
June 24th, Peach Orchard, and then July 31st, August 1st, Bridal Extravaganza, and that's at the Georgia Brown. We'll have all of the links, how to see us, how to meet with us, in the show notes and in the comments. So thank you everyone for coming.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.